When pride meets principles, Captain Maya Rodriguez stood before the towering doors of the great assembly hall, her hands steady despite the weight of humanity's future resting on her shoulders. The massive crystalline doors, each one carved from a single meteor and standing 50 feet tall, slowly parted with a sound like singing wind. Beyond them lay the heart of galactic civilization, the council chamber of Nexus 7. Maya stepped forward, her simple blue earth uniform stark against the opulent surroundings. The chamber was a marvel of engineering and artistry, a perfect sphere suspended in the void of space with transparent walls, offering breathtaking views of the swirling nebula beyond. But Maya's attention was focused on the 12 distinct levels that ringed the chamber's interior, each one representing a different species in the rigid hierarchy that governed the galaxy. At the bottom level, barely above the chamber floor, sat the newest members, the Vexhi, insectoid beings whose chittering filled the air with nervous energy. Above them were the Mordun, slug-like creatures whose translucent bodies pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Each level rose higher, representing greater status and power within the galactic order. Near the top sat the Zarthul, ancient beings of pure energy who communicated through color shifts in their containment fields. They had ruled sectors of space when Earth's sun was still forming, but even they deferred to the highest level, where the Kethmar Empire held absolute authority. The Tuo Kethmar were magnificent and terrible to behold, standing 12 feet tall on powerful hind legs. Their reptilian forms were covered in scales that shifted from deep emerald to burnished gold depending on their mood. Their eyes, ancient and intelligent, missed nothing. Their claws, retractable, but always visible, had carved an empire from the bones of lesser civilizations. High Counselor Vextar, the supreme leader of the Kethmar, rose from his floating throne. His voice, when it came, resonated through the chamber with the authority of eons. Human Representative Maya Rodriguez, you stand before the Council of 12, the governing body that has maintained peace and order in this galaxy for over 10,000 years. Maya bowed respectfully but did not avert her eyes. In human culture, direct eye contact showed honesty and courage. She had learned that many alien species interpreted it as a challenge. Today, she decided, let it be both. Honored counselors, Maya replied, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. I stand here as Earth's ambassador, ready to discuss humanity's place in the galactic community. A rumble of what might have been amusement came from Vextar's throat. Your place has already been determined, human. That is why you are here. The High Counselor gestured, and holographic displays materialized around the chamber. They showed detailed analyses of human society, technology, and capabilities. After extensive study, Vexitar continued, the Council has reached a unanimous decision. Humanity will be granted protected species status within our galactic framework. Maya felt her heart sink. She had hoped for partnership, for equality, for the chance to contribute to galactic civilization as equals. What does protected species status entail, High Counselor? The Zarthul representative pulsed with colors that the translation system rendered as satisfaction. Protection from the harsh realities of advanced civilization, young human. You will be sheltered from the complex decisions that govern galactic affairs. Your people will be provided with safe worlds to inhabit, adequate resources for survival, and meaningful work that contributes to the greater good. What kind of work? Maya asked, though she was beginning to suspect the answer. A new voice spoke from the middle tiers. Counselor Thekran of the Bordathi, a species resembling upright, wolves with silver fur and intelligent amber eyes. Humans have demonstrated remarkable problem-solving abilities and creativity. These traits, while primitive in nature, have practical applications. Your people will provide innovative solutions to challenges that more advanced species consider beneath their attention. Maya's jaw clenched. You mean manual labor and menial tasks? Useful labor, corrected Vextar smoothly. Consider the alternative, Ambassador Rodriguez. Without council protection, humanity faces the chaos of unguided development. Your species shows disturbing tendencies toward violence and unpredictability. Left to your own devices, You might threaten galactic stability. The chamber fell silent as Maya processed the true meaning of their offer. Humanity would become a servant species, valued only for their ability to solve problems that the superior races couldn't be bothered with. They would live in gilded cages, their potential forever limited by alien masters who saw them as clever pets. High Counselor, Maya said slowly. Before I respond to your generous offer, I have some questions about our current relationship with the Council species. Vextar's scales shifted toward a deeper green, a sign of growing irritation. Ask your questions quickly, human. The Council's time is valuable. Maya activated her personal data pad, displaying information she had spent months gathering. 3 years ago, the Mordoon civilization faced a crisis when their bioluminescent communication system began failing due to radiation exposure from their binary star system. The problem was solved by Dr. Chen Wei of Beijing University, who developed a filtering technique that restored their ability to communicate. However, the official records credit the solution to Mordoon scientists. The slug-like Mordoon representative shifted uncomfortably. Their patterns flickering with what Maya had learned indicated embarrassment. 2 years ago, Maya continued, the Vexhai hive colonies were dying from a mysterious fungal infection. The cure was developed by mycologist Dr. Sarah Okafor from Lagos, Nigeria. Again, the official records show this as a Vexhai discovery. The insectoid Vexhai began chittering anxiously among themselves. Maya's voice grew stronger as she continued. The Bordathi's interstellar navigation systems were revolutionized by the work of physicist Dr. Raj Patel, whose quantum calculation methods reduced travel time by 40%. The Zarthol's energy containment breakthrough came from engineer Maria Santos, whose magnetic field theories solved problems your species had struggled with for centuries. The chamber erupted in angry voices, clicks, hums, and color displays, as representatives from multiple species began protesting simultaneously. Through it all, High Counselor Vextar remained silent, his ancient eyes fixed on Maya with what might have been newfound respect. Silence. Vextar's roar filled the chamber, immediately quieting all other voices. Human, you speak of individual cases. Even if these claims were true, they represent minor contributions to galactic civilization. Maya smiled, and there was steel in her expression. Minor contributions? High Counselor, in the past 5 years, humans have solved over 3,000 critical problems across your civilizations. Medical breakthroughs, engineering solutions, agricultural innovations, communication improvements, energy efficiency upgrades, all credited to other species, all developed by the primitive minds you now offer to protect. She gestured to her data pad, and new holographic displays filled the chamber. The quantum resonance drives powering your fastest ships, designed by Dr. Ahmed Hassan in Cairo. The bio-neural networks running your most advanced computers, created by Dr. Yuki Tanaka in Tokyo. The atmospheric processors that made 12 dead worlds habitable, invented by a team led by Dr. Elena Petrov in Moscow. The silence in the chamber was deafening. For the first time in millennia, the Council of 12 faced an uncomfortable truth. Their civilization was not as advanced as they believed. Counselor Thekran's ears flattened against his skull, a sign of distress in his species. Even if these claims have merit, it changes nothing. Humans require guidance to channel their abilities properly. Without structure, your creativity becomes chaotic and dangerous. Dangerous to whom? Maya asked pointedly. To galactic stability, or to the established order that keeps your species at the top of the hierarchy? High Counselor Vextar rose to his full, imposing height. Enough. You will accept the Council's decision or face the consequences. Protected species status is not a request, human. It is a decree. Maya looked around the chamber one final time, meeting the eyes of each representative. Some showed anger, others confusion, and a few displayed what she hoped was the beginning of understanding. High Counselor, with all due respect, humanity must decline your generous offer. The words hit the chamber like a physical force. Several representatives began speaking at once, their voices filled with shock and outrage. You cannot decline, screeched the Vex High representative. No species refuses Council protection. The precedent would be catastrophic, pulsed the Zarthul delegate in alarmed colors. But Maya wasn't finished. She straightened her shoulders and spoke with the voice of her entire species. Not only do we decline protected species status, but, effective immediately, Earth withdraws from all cooperative agreements with Council civilizations. All human researchers, engineers, doctors, teachers, and workers throughout the galaxy are hereby recalled to Earth. The chamber exploded into chaos. Representatives from 12 species began shouting simultaneously, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of panic and rage. High Counselor Vextar's scales had shifted to a deep angry red. "You don't understand what you're doing, human. Without Council protection, without access to our technology and markets, humanity will stagnate in your primitive corner of the galaxy." Maya walked toward the chamber's exit, her footsteps echoing in the sudden quiet that followed Vextar's pronouncement. At the towering doors, she turned back one final time. "Perhaps, High Counselor, but we will stagnate as free beings, not as servants. And who knows, maybe the galaxy will discover what humanity can truly accomplish when we're not working in your shadow." The crystalline doors sang shut behind her, cutting off the rising panic from within. Maya walked to the station's communication center and sent a single message that would reach every human outpost, ship, and settlement in the galaxy. "Protocol 0 is now active. Come home." Behind her, through the transparent walls of Nexus 7, she could see ships already changing course. Human vessels followed by a few alien craft whose crews had learned to value cooperation over domination. They were heading for Earth, carrying with them the knowledge, skills, and innovations that had secretly held galactic civilization together. As Maya watched the exodus begin, she felt a mixture of fear and exhilaration. Humanity was about to face the unknown without the safety net they had never realized was actually a cage. But for the first time in years, they would face it as free beings, masters of their own destiny. The galaxy would learn what humans could achieve when they worked, for themselves instead of others, and Maya suspected that lesson would change everything. When the Foundation crumbles, Dr. James Park stood in the pristine corridors of the medical research vessel, Healing Light, watching his team pack the last of their equipment with methodical precision. The ship had been orbiting the Morden homeworld for 3 years, serving as a mobile laboratory for developing treatments for diseases that affected bioluminescent species. What the slug-like Morden didn't know was that James and his team had solved medical problems in weeks that Morden researchers had struggled with for decades. The lead Morden scientist, a creature named Fluxara, whose patterns had grown increasingly dim with distress, approached James with undulating movements that spoke of desperation. "Dr. Park, surely there must be some misunderstanding. Your research is vital to our people's survival. The chromatic plague continues to spread through our outer colonies." James paused in his packing, his steady hands gentle as he secured a delicate piece of medical equipment. At 42, he had dedicated his life to healing regardless of species. The plague could be stopped within days if the Moradun understood the simple principles he had tried to teach them. "The plague can be eliminated quickly, Fluxara," James said softly. "The solution involves understanding how bioluminescent proteins react to specific amino acid sequences. I submitted a complete treatment protocol to your medical council 8 months ago." The alien scientist's patterns flickered with hope. "Then you will help us implement this treatment?" James shook his head sadly. "The protocol was rejected because it came from a protected species researcher. Your council stated that primitive human intuition could not possibly understand advanced Morden biology." 3 months later, when Dr. Luminar submitted the same protocol with minor modifications, it was accepted for further study. Fluxara's bioluminescent patterns dimmed to almost nothing. "The protocol remains under review by our bureaucratic systems while colonies die from a plague that could be cured in days. I would gladly teach you the solution," James continued, "but Earth has recalled all human medical personnel. I have my orders." As James's shuttle departed the research vessel, he watched through the viewport as emergency signals began flashing across the Mordun colonies. Without human medical staff, the carefully maintained balance of treatments and preventive care was already breaking down. Halfway across the galaxy, Engineer Lisa Chen was experiencing her own moment of departure. The massive mining operation on Zerion 4 had been her workplace for 5 years, during which she had revolutionized their extraction processes. The enormous fusion-powered mining platforms that carved precious metals from the planet's core were based on efficiency principles that Lisa had developed as part of her doctoral thesis at MIT Foreman Graphics. A towering Bordathi whose silver fur had grown increasingly gray with stress, watched with growing anxiety as Lisa's team dismantled the human-designed control systems. Engineer Chen, this is madness. Without these systems, our extraction efficiency will drop by 60%. Our quotas will be impossible to meet. Lisa looked up from the complex machinery she was carefully removing, her young face set with determination that reminded Gravix uncomfortably of Maya Rodriguez's expression during that final council session. Foreman, these systems were designed using principles that your engineers called primitive human guesswork, rather than proper scientific methodology. Your technical staff insisted our approach was fundamentally flawed. Perhaps we were too hasty in that assessment, Gravix admitted, his pride warring with desperation. Perhaps, Lisa agreed, but my orders are clear. All human-designed systems are to be deactivated and removed. Your engineers assured the council they could improve upon our primitive designs. Now they'll have the chance to prove it. As Lisa's team finished their work, the lights in the mining facility flickered and dimmed. The massive fusion reactors that had hummed with perfect efficiency for 5 years began to struggle under the load. Alarms started sounding as system after system registered critical failures. On the education world of Scholara Prime, teacher Robert Kim was coordinating the most difficult evacuation of his career. As the former head of Earth's Interspecies Education Initiative, Robert had overseen the development of teaching methods that could effectively communicate complex concepts to multiple alien species simultaneously. Robert stood in the vast learning halls of Scholara Prime, watching his teams load the last of their specialized educational equipment onto transport ships. The facility had served as the galaxy's premier educational center, training young beings from dozens of species to work together and understand each other's perspectives. The local Zarthul administrator, an energy being called Bright Thought, pulsed with colors that indicated severe distress. Teacher Kim, surely you understand the consequences of your departure. These learning centers educate the future leaders of 12 civilizations. Your teaching methods have produced the most effective cross-species communication in galactic history. Robert nodded grimly. He understood better than anyone what would happen when the carefully crafted educational programs collapsed. Bright Thought, my teams have been trying to train your instructors in our methods for years. Every time we demonstrated a more effective technique, we were told that pure energy beings couldn't learn from primitive biological creatures. The Zarthul's containment field flickered with patterns that the translation system rendered as embarrassment. Perhaps our educators were overly focused on traditional approaches. Traditional approaches, Robert repeated, gesturing to the learning halls around them, that produced communication failures between species 60% of the time. Human methods reduced that to less than 5%, but every successful program was officially credited to your people after we developed it. As the last human transport lifted off from Scholara Prime, Robert watched through the ship's sensors as the automated teaching systems began to fail. The carefully balanced curricula that had taken years to develop, the precisely timed interaction protocols, the innovative assessment methods that worked across dozens of species, all of it required human oversight to function properly. The crisis was spreading faster than anyone had anticipated. On Nexus 7, the capital station of galactic civilization, emergency sessions had been running continuously for weeks. The council chamber that had once been filled with arrogant certainty was now thick with panic and desperation. High Counselor Vextar paced before the assembly, his reptilian features twisted with fury and growing fear. Status reports from all sectors, he demanded. The Bordathi representative's ears lay flat against his skull in distress. Mining operations across 7 systems are operating at 30% efficiency. The extraction methods humans developed somehow understood mineral formations at an intuitive level that our geological models cannot replicate. The Vex High delegate chittered anxiously. Our construction projects are experiencing critical failures. Human engineering consultants understood structural dynamics in ways that our computational systems cannot duplicate. Entire colonies are without adequate shelter. Each report was worse than the last. The Zarthul energy beings, despite their ancient wisdom, admitted they could not maintain the power distribution networks that humans had designed. The Morden biomedical facilities were overwhelmed as diseases spread unchecked without human treatment protocols. "This is impossible," roared Vextar. "How can one primitive species be responsible for so much of our technological infrastructure?" The newest member of the council, a nervous Keldry creature resembling a crystalline tree, spoke with a voice like chiming bells. Perhaps because they were never primitive at all. Perhaps we were too proud to see the truth. The silence that followed was broken by an urgent communication signal. The massive display screens around the chamber activated, showing a map of the galaxy dotted with red warning indicators. Each red dot represented a critical system failure, somewhere in council space. The central computer's synthesized voice filled the chamber with mechanical precision. Economic projections indicate complete systemic collapse within 12 months if current trends continue. Supply chains are failing, communication networks are fragmenting, and food production is insufficient to maintain current population levels. "What? About our reserves?" demanded Vextar. "Emergency supplies, backup systems." "All backup systems rely on human-maintained primary infrastructure," the computer replied. "Emergency supplies are distributed through human-designed logistics networks. Even reserve food stores require preservation techniques developed by human scientists." As the awful truth settled over the council, a new communication signal pierced the chamber's chaos. The screens shifted to show Maya Rodriguez, transmitting from a human vessel somewhere in deep space. "Honored representatives of the Galactic Council," Maya began, her voice calm and professional. "We are receiving reports of widespread system failures throughout Council space. Earth wishes to express its regret that these difficulties have arisen so soon after our departure." Vextar leaned forward, his eyes burning with desperate hope. "Rodriguez, thank the void you've contacted us. Surely Earth can see that this situation benefits no one. We are prepared to discuss new terms for human membership in the Council." Maya's expression didn't change. "I'm afraid you misunderstand, High Counselor. This is not a negotiation. This is a notification. Earth is establishing the Free Worlds Alliance. We invite any species that seeks genuine cooperation rather than domination to join us." The chamber erupted in protests and demands, but Maya continued, speaking as if she couldn't hear them. "The alliance will be based on principles of equality, mutual respect, and shared benefit. Member species will contribute according to their abilities and receive according to their needs. No species will be considered superior to others. You cannot survive without the Council," Vextar shouted. "Without access to our markets, our technology, our protection." Maya smiled, and there was something profound about the expression. "Actually, High Counselor, it appears that you cannot survive without us. But we wish you well in your efforts to rebuild your civilization. Perhaps this experience will teach you the value of cooperation over domination." The transmission ended, leaving the Council in stunned silence. Around the galaxy, human ships were carrying their crews toward the unknown regions beyond Council space. Behind them, the most advanced civilization in galactic history was beginning to collapse under the weight of its own arrogance. But they were not traveling alone. Throughout Council space, ships from other species were changing course, following the human fleet toward an uncertain but hopeful future. Morden colonies that had been exploited for their bioluminescent abilities, Bordathi settlements that had rebelled against the mining quotas, even some Keldry communities that had grown tired of being treated as decorative objects rather than sentient beings. They had all heard Maya's message, and they had made their choice. The old order was dying, but something new was being born among the stars, something that valued innovation over tradition, cooperation over domination, and hope over fear. The galaxy would never be the same again. When innovation meets freedom, 2 years had passed since humanity's dramatic exodus from Council space. And Maya Rodriguez stood on the observation deck of New Terra Station, watching the impossible become reality. The massive space station hung in orbit around a blue-green world that had been uninhabitable just 24 months ago. Now, it teemed with life from dozens of species, all working together to build something the galaxy had never seen before. A truly cooperative civilization. Maya wore the simple silver uniform of the Free Worlds Alliance, her new title embroidered in multiple languages, President of the Alliance Council. It was a position that rotated every 2 years among member species, ensuring that no single group could dominate the others. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see the daily miracle that New Terra had become. Human agricultural. Specialists worked alongside Keldry botanists to create hybrid farms that produced food for both carbon and silicon-based life forms. Morden medical researchers collaborated with human doctors to develop treatments that worked across multiple biological systems. In the orbital shipyards, vessels unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen took shape under the guidance of integrated design teams. A gentle chime announced an arrival, and Maya turned to see Dr. James Park entering the observation lounge. The Iwan, former medical researcher, looked younger than he had in years, his eyes bright with the satisfaction of meaningful work. Behind him walked Fluxara, the Morden scientist who had become his closest collaborator in developing multi-species medical treatments. Maya, James said, his voice carrying the excitement of discovery. You need to see what we've accomplished in the medical bay. Fluxara and I have just completed the first successful treatment of Andromedan flux syndrome using combined human Morden protocols. Fluxara's bioluminescent patterns pulsed with joy. Dr. Park's insight into protein interactions, combined with our understanding of bioluminescent healing, has created something neither species could achieve alone. We can now treat conditions that were considered incurable by the Council's medical establishment. Maya smiled, remembering the desperate pleas they had received from Council worlds as various plagues and diseases spread unchecked. The Alliance's response had been swift and generous, offering free medical aid to any world that requested it, regardless of their political affiliation. The door chimed again, and engineer Lisa Chen entered with her usual confident stride. The Pry, former mining coordinator, now served as the Alliance's Director of Planetary Development, overseeing the transformation of barren worlds into thriving colonies. Her success rate was unprecedented, largely because she worked with the natural characteristics of each planet, rather than forcing them into standardized templates. Maya, we've just received confirmation from the Kepler colony, Lisa announced, her weathered face showing satisfaction. The terraforming project is ahead of schedule, and the first permanent settlements will be ready within 4 months. More. Importantly, we've received requests from 23 Council worlds asking if we can help with their own environmental problems. What's the situation in Council space? Maya asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Lisa's expression darkened. Not good. The Kethmar Empire is fragmenting as colony worlds declare independence. The communication network is barely functional, and trade between member worlds has dropped by 75%. There are reports of resource riots on the EU. Zarthal energy worlds and the Vex High construction projects have essentially ceased. Maya nodded grimly. The Alliance had been monitoring the Council's decline with a mixture of sadness and inevitability. The old system had been built on exploitation and hierarchy, and without human innovation to hold it together, it was collapsing under its own weight. A priority alert sounded through the station's communication system, indicating an incoming transmission of the highest importance. Maya moved to the central console and activated the display. The holographic image that appeared showed a figure that made everyone in the room gasp with surprise. It was High Counselor Vextar of the Kethmar Empire, but this was not the proud, arrogant leader they remembered. His scales were dull and patched, his eyes showed the weight of sleepless nights, and his once magnificent bearing had been reduced to barely controlled desperation. President Rodriguez, Vextar began, his voice carefully controlled but unable to hide the exhaustion beneath. The Council formally requests an emergency meeting with Alliance leadership. We wish to discuss cooperative arrangements between our organizations. Maya exchanged glances with James and Lisa before responding. High Counselor, the Alliance is always willing to meet with any organization seeking genuine cooperation. However, our experience suggests that the Council system is fundamentally incompatible with cooperative principles. Vextar's eyes flashed with the remnants of his old pride, but he controlled himself with visible effort. What would it take for the Council to earn Alliance cooperation? Maya leaned forward, her voice carrying the weight of hard-learned wisdom. True equality, High Counselor. An end to hierarchical species rankings. Shared decision-making based on consensus rather than domination. Recognition that every species has unique gifts to contribute, regardless of their technological development or military power. The silence that followed stretched for nearly a full minute. Finally, Vextar spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. You're asking us to abandon everything the Council represents. No, Maya replied gently. We're asking you to embrace everything the Council could become. Before Vextar could respond, another voice interrupted the transmission. Perhaps it's time we listen to what the humans have been trying to teach us. The view expanded to show Bright Thought, the Zarthul energy being from Scholara Prime. The ancient creature's patterns pulsed with colors that indicated deep contemplation and newfound humility. For 10,000 years, Bright Thought continued, we have ruled through the assumption that age equals wisdom, that technological advancement equals superiority. But in 2 short years, the Alliance has achieved levels of cooperation and innovation that we never imagined possible. More voices joined the transmission as other Council representatives added their perspectives. The Bordathi mining administrator spoke of watching Alliance worlds achieve resource extraction without environmental destruction. The Vex High construction coordinator described Alliance building projects that created beauty alongside functionality. The question, said a new voice, is whether the old system can change enough to deserve a place in this new galaxy. The D. Speaker was Councillor Thekran of the Bordathi, but his tone carried none of the condescension Maya remembered from their first meeting. Instead, there was genuine curiosity and hope. Maya stood silent for a moment, considering her words carefully. The Alliance will welcome any species that commits to our principles of equality and mutual respect. But understand this. We will not compromise those principles for political convenience. Every member species, whether they join us from the Council or from the independent worlds, enters as equals. What about our existing power structures? Asked Vextar. Our established territories and trade agreements? Those are matters for negotiation among equals, Maya replied. The Alliance doesn't impose solutions from above. We work together to find answers that benefit everyone. The transmission continued for another hour as Council representatives asked detailed questions about Alliance membership, governance structures, and cooperative principles. Maya could see the moment when understanding began to dawn on their faces. The Alliance wasn't just offering a different form of government, it was offering a completely different way of thinking about civilization itself. Finally, Vextar spoke for the entire Council. President Rodriguez, the Council formally requests permission to send observers to Alliance space. We wish to study your methods and determine if our civilizations can find common ground. Maya smiled, and for the first time in their relationship it was warm and welcoming. High Counselor, observer teams from any species are always welcome in Alliance space. We have nothing to hide and everything to share. As the transmission ended, Maya turned to her colleagues. What do you think? Can the Council species really change? James was the first to respond. Some will embrace cooperation naturally. Others will struggle with giving up their privileged positions. But the ones who truly commit to change will find something better than they ever imagined. Lisa nodded, in agreement. The Alliance model works because it's based on simple principles. Everyone contributes their best abilities. Everyone benefits from collective success. And everyone has a voice in decisions that affect them. It's not complicated, but it requires humility. 3 months later, Maya stood once again on the observation deck of New Terra Station, but now the view was dramatically different. Ships from across the galaxy filled the space around the station. representing dozens of species that had chosen cooperation over domination. The first Council observer teams had arrived 2 weeks earlier, and their reports back to their home civilizations had triggered an unprecedented wave of applications for Alliance membership. Entire sectors of former Council space were declaring independence and requesting Alliance support for their transitions to cooperative governance. "President Rodriguez," came a familiar voice behind her. Maya turned to see Fluxara approaching, his bioluminescent patterns bright with excitement. "The medical conference has concluded and I bring extraordinary news." Maya waited as the Morden scientist composed himself. "The cooperative research model has produced more medical breakthroughs in 3 months than the Council achieved in 3 decades. When species share knowledge freely instead of hoarding it for competitive advantage, innovation accelerates exponentially. This had become the pattern throughout Alliance space. When beings worked together as equals rather than competitors, their combined abilities produced results that none could achieve alone. Agricultural yields had increased beyond all projections. Engineering projects that had been considered impossible were becoming routine. Even art and culture were flourishing. As different species shared their unique perspectives, a new chime announced another arrival, and Maya turned to see a figure that made her pause in surprise. It was Vexitar, but not as a holographic transmission. The former High Counselor stood in the observation lounge, his scales polished but subdued, wearing not the elaborate robes of his office but a simple uniform similar to Maya's own. "President Rodriguez," Vexitar said, offering a respectful bow that would have been unthinkable from a Kethmar leader just months earlier. "I come not as a representative of the Council, but as an individual seeking to understand how my people might earn a place in the Alliance." Maya extended her hand in the human gesture of greeting, and after a moment's hesitation, Vexitar clasped it with his clawed appendage. "Former High Counselor, you are welcome here, as Vexitar the individual, not as a representative of hierarchy or power." "That," Vexitar replied with something that might have been humor, "is exactly what I was hoping you would say." Over the following hours, Maya gave Vexitar a complete tour.